folks, I'm Tom Vasel. Welcome to Best of Publishers. Today we're taking a look at Avalon Hill. You might say, wait, Tom, you already talked about Avalon Hill. Well, actually, Avalon Hill has an interesting history. Avalon Hill started off as a wargaming company and strategy games, mostly war games. And then I think it was around 1999 or 2000, they were bought by Avalon Hill, by Hasbro. And so Hasbro Avalon Hill, I've already done a top 10 list on them. I think those games are gorgeous, interesting, lots of strategy to them. But the old Avalon Hill, I used to go around, I'd look in thrift stores to find these games, look at the catalog and go, wow, these games look amazing. Now, be warned, my old Avalon Hill list is going to be different than someone who actually does play war games. You're not going to find some of their more popular games like Squad Leader and such on my list because while I played some of these as a kid and enjoy some of the war games that they have done, they're just not in my 10 favorites. What are my 10 favorites, you might wonder? Well, here we go. And I'm going to start with a game I really don't like, but I'm putting on my list because of one reason. Well, we'll start with it, Diplomacy. Now, Diplomacy has been made by many different companies, but Avalon Hill had it for a while. I despise Diplomacy. It's one of my least favorite games of all time. Why would I put it on the list? The reason I put it on the list is because I found it, as a teacher, a very effective tool to not only show World War I or pre-World War I diplomatic relationships between nations, but as a way for kids in classes to see how to work together. And while I hate Diplomacy as a passion, in a classroom, it's great. It's one of the best games I've ever run. Some of you are going to disagree with me on their hatred for it, I'm sure. The next one I barely like, and that is Kingmaker. But I had a lot of good times playing this as a kid. Kingmaker, which takes back during the War of the Roses, and there's all different people and different knights and different areas and different titles that are being handed out. Really cool theming in the game. Some crazy events. Whole cities can die because of plagues and a lot of stuff going on, and the component quality is obviously not that great, but that's the same for most of these games. But still, a lot of good memories as I would take control of this heir and then try to take out the king, so this person would become the king. It was a very intriguing game, and getting your knights together and hiring mercenaries. Kingmaker. Number 8 is Wizard's Quest. This was one of those ones that when I saw in a magazine as a kid, I was like, oh, this game looks amazing. It looks like Risk with monsters. Well, it is. It's Risk with these little black monsters. I forget what they're called. They're just popping up all over the board. And so you have to fight these guys as well as each other. It's really not that great of a game. It's kind of a dice chucking, Risk-ish style game. But it has a little bit of extra things to it. And what a great cover. Wizard's Quest. Number 7 is Monsters Ravage America, which sounded really mean. And so I think they changed it later on. The new Avalon Hill produced it as Monsters Menace America, which doesn't sound quite as terrible. In Monsters Ravage America, each person is controlling one giant monster, Godzilla, King Kong, etc., something like that. And you also control one of the 4 armed forces, Air Force, Army, Marines, Navy. So you are trying to blow up the other people's monster, not very well, I guess hurt them slightly, until the end of the game in which you just have one big slugfest between any monsters that are sticking around. It's lucky, it's dice rolling near the end, but it is very entertaining to see. And you're playing and you're walking around smashing things, and here comes the army sending tanks, and you're blowing those tanks up. An interesting game, Monsters Ravage America. Number 6 is Britannia. Now, this is a historical game which was later on remade by Fantasy Flight Games. Britannia takes place and watches from the Roman invasion of England, the history period there, all the way up to the Norman invasion, and takes that period of time. And during that period of time, you control 4 different, or I think it's 4 for each player, 4 different factions of people. You might have the Picts, and you might have the Saxons, you might have the Romans, and as you take these people, you need to score points as you possibly can. And as time goes by, some factions are going to disappear. Some factions are going to get weaker. The Romans start out very strong, but they're gone by the end of the game. And you need to use the different factions that you have as the game progresses together to get the most points. Little straitjacket feeling where it doesn't change that much from game to game, but very historically cool, Britannia. Number 5 is Acquire. Now, Acquire has been made by several companies over the year, but Acquire is a great game of stock market trading. As you turn over tiles and you place these tiles out and form companies on the board, and then you invest in those companies, buy low, sell high. Many, many great versions of Acquire have been made over the years, but I just wanted to point out what a great stock market game it was. Number 4 is Kremlin. I have to give Kremlin a lot of credit. When I designed my own game here, Nothing Personal, shilling, this Nothing Personal was based on Kremlin. Now, it doesn't look like Kremlin because we start with Kremlin and move things around, but Kremlin was interesting. As a kid, I was like, oh, these Kremlin guys. I lived in the United States in the 80s. You know, what are they doing? And this game, you're watching the Kremlin backstabbing and fighting, and you have you write down how much influence you have on the different people and moving them into the different spots so that you can get the person to wave at the parade. Very, very intrigue-filled game. Just was remade a few years recently from Jolly Roger Games. That's Kremlin. That was number 4. Number 3 is Merchants of Venus. If Eric Summer was here right now, he'd probably hug me because this is his favorite game. This one was also remade by Fantasy Flight Games, but many people like the original. In this one, you have your spaceship, and you got to go around and pick up stuff from here and deliver from here, meanwhile picking up some things, exploring, finding things. It has dice rolling, a really cool board with loops and all different places to go to. That's Merchants of Venus. Number 2 is Titan the Arena. I don't know if I never played the Titan game. I don't really want to. I hear just a bunch of dice rolling, and it's really, really long. Titan the Arena really shortened that down. It was a bunch of monsters in the arena, and you are betting on them. And each round, one of them is knocked out. And hopefully it's not one that you've bet on until it gets smaller and smaller. And at the end, the remaining monsters, how much you've bet on them determines your points for the end of the game. A lot of fun, very simple, and works great for 3 players. Was later made into Colossal Arena from Fantasy Flight Games. And number 1 from Avalon Hill. And you're like, come on, Tom, Panzerblitz or Gettysburg. Or yeah, I know. Again, I acknowledge that there are a lot of great war games that Avalon Hill has made, but I'll leave that top 10 list for someone else. My number 1 game from the old Avalon Hill is Dune. Dune is a game that was originally not made for the Dune book series, but was redone, and it feels like it was. Designed by the same folks who made Cosmic Encounter, Dune is an amazingly interesting game that brings to life the book Dune. There's different factions. In fact, this game plays honestly best with 6, as the Harkonnen are there backstabbing people. They have a special backstabbing ability, and you have the Atreides and the Fremen and the Ben Gesserit are trying to guess who's going to win what turn. This game was remade later on by Fantasy Flight as Rex. It was taken out of the Dune universe and put into their Twilight Imperium universe, but really the Dune universe fits this so well. With innovative combat, so many things from Dune, we see them later on in other games, and we're like, wow, this is something that they were like ahead of their time. Yeah, they really were. Dune is a fantastic game. It's pretty long. Well, it can be long. It depends on what kind of alliances are made. Multiple people can win. Very intriguing game, and I think the best of the old Avalon Hill. But I'm sure I'm wrong here. I'm sure some of you are saying, how could you didn't talk about some of their great sports games or these great war games? Well, here's your chance. Tell people in the comments below. Anyway, until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and this has been Best of Publishers, the old Avalon Hill.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.